So I'm going to talk about a couple things, and because one of the things that's always interested me in doing this, and this has come up in a few of the other talks today, is just the inherent tension that exists between a teacher-managed space, the classroom, and how you run a student-centered classroom in a space which is, just for all the obvious reasons, teacher-managed or institution-managed. And I think there's a lot of discussion about that. But I think one of the things that sometimes get lost. I mean, like there are ways of highlighting this and ways of making this happen. So I just want to go and spend a little bit on just kind of background. And is this visible? Okay. Something that's kind of come up basically in this space. Like, what does a teacher do? What's their role? And obviously, I have just a couple things, and I'm leading, to kind of one specific point on this. But basically, teachers have a couple obligations. First is obviously to meet, the needs that, Miles was talking about at the end of his thing, and a couple other people were talking about. You need to be able to show that kids have learned. But alongside that, you have the idea that Chris was talking about, a teacher's role. Yeah, I mean, you need to get kids questioning, and you need to effectively, teach subversion, and actually get that questioning going on and get it actively. Get it going on actively. Using a model really where critical thinking equates to healthy skepticism, and that skepticism should actually include stuff that comes from the teacher's mouth. I mean, essentially, there is nothing that's sacred. Everything is open for question. And that's just a part of it. And it's all kind of tied to the other basic idea that, let's face it, people are pretty resilient. Most kids that you see in your classroom are going to turn out relatively well in the absence of anything really bad being done to them. Kids want to learn. Kids are curious. Kids come at it from the right place. And the corollary for all this, oftentimes the most difficult job in running a classroom is knowing when to get out of the way. Philosophical ideas. And again, it's easy to kind of talk about these. I think it gets to be a bit more tricky when you need to talk about how you actually provide this in the classroom. Because I think it's easy to say that, again, like the role of the teacher needs to be something that steps back. It gets more difficult when you need to operationalize what a teacher has to deliver. Some things, this is by no means a comprehensive list, but basically, one of the things that teachers can provide is a model of what intellectual rigor looks like. There are ways of backing up an argument. There are ways of not doing it. A teacher can show that. How does a teacher do that in a student-centered classroom? We'll kind of get to that when we talk about what this looks like on the screen. Teachers can also show, basically a rhetorical strategy that's appropriate for the discipline. In a student-centered classroom, that means, at times the teacher voice is alongside the student voices. Again, something that we'll talk about when we take a look at how this works out. Quickly going through the other things. Teachers give an ability to vet resources. Again, a kid is going online. How do you show a kid what's a good source and what's not a reliable source? There are ways of looking at that. This gets back to the idea of, critical thinking as a means to that healthy skepticism. Teachers obviously, or hopefully, in most cases, will have better organizational skills than a lot of the students they teach. Something else a teacher can and should provide through modeling. And the most important thing, and I think when we think of teachers who have inspired us down the road, I mean, the reason that most of us actually make it into education, you need to be able to show, and more importantly, you need to have the tools to show within your online class presence what it looks like to be a lifelong learner. What does curiosity look like in the day-to-day work of learning? And setting up a toolkit that lets you focus on these things is one of the challenges, because it's easy to talk about these abstract ideas, but one of the things that often gets lost is a translation into these ideas on the screen. So what does a class organized along these principles look like? And there's a pretty infinite number of answers to that. There are a lot of different ways to be doing it. What I'm going to throw up here is one, it's a couple things that have worked in the past. So translating these concepts into layout, a couple things we're going to look at. A few elements of a site. And some of these are graphic elements, some of these are functional elements. You got the home page, and we'll go and take a look at that. But basically, what appears on the home page sends a very clear and specific message. We're going to look at the first two first, the home page and the primary links. Because the method you use to highlight content sends a huge message to the kids that are in your class about what your class is going to be about. If your home page is a calendar, that sends a message. Could send a message. This is basically a product-driven course. These are the dates you have to hit. If you have a home page that highlights student content, at this point, you're sending a different message. So this is a dummy site that I built up. There are a few. I think I have maybe four or five different users. The teacher user is Winifred, and basically Tommy and this Bill character is intruding into the site, but we can take care of him. But yeah, there are a few different student users, and we'll kind of log in and see what this looks like from their perspective. But in this homepage, the homepage is set to aggregate class blogs. So the first thing a kid sees when they come onto the site, it's not a message from the teacher, it's not a message from the school, it's their work. And giving them the ability to actually put their work out there for their peers to see and to make it immediately accessible with the click of a button. Again, it's another way of putting the talk about student-centered learning into practice. Taking a look at the primary links here. You have assignments, announcements, blogs, writing process, links, and chatter. 5 basic things. Obviously, you have the institutional needs of the school. The teacher is going to have to communicate with the class. They need to actually say, okay, here's an assignment. Does that need to be on the home page? You can put it there. And I'll actually, kind of as we move on, show you the mechanism for getting that across. But as a default, you have this link here. The kid logs on, they want to see what their work is. They go and they check out assignments. Right now, I'm logged in as Winifred, so I am effectively the teacher of the class. Going to create an assignment. So, go and create a page. I tag it with an assignment. Read chapters 4 through 6 in Moby Dick. Questions. Questions go here. And then submit. So then we go back to check this out. And list of assignments appear. And these are also sortable by date. So you can, have it sort ascending, sort descending. But by making this first easily accessible, but slightly out of the way, you keep your focus where a student-centered class should be, on the work, on the kid's work, on the kid's voice. If you notice, there's a post from Winifred right in the middle of this. The only thing that distinguishes her name from anything else, her post as a teacher post, is the username. In this context, she's a voice among voices, which in a student-centered class, basically getting the emphasis off the teacher as the person who drives discussion, I think it's an important distinction to make. The teacher is the only user that can post assignments and announcements, because that's also appropriate for a classroom setting, and there are also times when, you need to, a teacher has a job to do, and if a kid isn't learning, a teacher is accountable for that, and that's good. But that accountability doesn't need to trump the student-centered nature of the class, and by thinking about the way you lay this out, you can accommodate that. moving back into kind of concepts into layout. We touched a little bit on the blogs here. We're going to talk about tags and social bookmarking in a second. Within this site, again, this site also generates a tag cloud. And you can use this as a way for, students to hammer down through content. In the exact same way that you would use this within ELG, you use this within the context of a class. So basically, a kid wants to see what rough drafts have been handed in. They follow the tag cloud. They can get that done. We'll get back to we're also going to talk about steps in the writing process in a way kind of this can facilitate that type of learning. But the point is to have as many doors as possible into the content. If we go to the bottom of the page, you can see anything tagged with the rough draft comes with a feed. As a teacher, that's useful. You know, a kid's turning in a rough draft, you subscribe to the feed, you pick that up. You don't need to go to the site if that's how you want to do it. But again, that's a teacher choice. A kid wants to see what blog posts are being done. You go down to the home page, you have an RSS feed. You can pick it up. If you go to the top where this last link is called Chatter. This is something that I do in every class, and it's something that I recommend setting up for basically for the student-centered learning environment. If kids feel that all you care about as a teacher is them getting their work done, it decreases motivation. If you actually show that other stuff is valuable by, again, highlighting that and giving quick access to it, again, via an RSS feed, any blog post that gets tagged with the miscellaneous category appears in Chatter. So talk about ways, again, of just going from the student-centered area to what happens on the screen. Another mechanism for doing it. Last thing I want to show on this is social bookmarking within the site, and it's a pretty obviously well-known thing. But a lot of times people will talk about, okay, you want to get your blog by going to Blogger, you want to get your pictures by going to Flickr, you want to get your social bookmarks by going to Delicious. So you get these accounts, you get all your feeds for them, and you aggregate those feeds back in your feed reader, and then you incorporate these into your class. It's good, but it's tiring. Within the context of something like this, you can actually create a course-specific collection of social bookmarks that the students create. Another way of demonstrating that, what they put into the class matters. What they put into the class becomes the content. Gets back to what, Chris's presentation, what's the community for this text? Is there a community with this text? And in this case, yeah, because the kids are creating the text as they're creating the community. So basically, pretty straightforward process. You just go and let's see. So found this place on the web, this thing called Curverider. And then again, you can free tag categories for it. So then we go and submit. And then, of course, as kids add things in, they all show up in the tag cloud. So as the students generate the content, the site changes in response to what they bring in.